Today, we are going to decode the secret language of your heartbeat. We're setting off on an electrical journey to really understand what makes your heart tick and, what happens when it goes a little offbeat.
I mean, it's a feeling most of us have had at some point, right? That weird little flutter in your chest during a stressful meeting, or the sensation of your heart just pounding after a good run. A lot of the time, it's totally harmless, but those feelings are actually a little window into this incredible process happening inside you every single second.
And that's because your heart isn't just a muscle that pumps blood. It's an incredibly sophisticated electrical organ. Understanding that electrical journey is absolutely the key to understanding your heart's health.
Okay, so before we can even begin to understand what happens when things go wrong, let's just take a moment to appreciate the masterpiece of timing and coordination that is a normal, healthy heartbeat.
I want you to think of your heart like a perfect orchestra. And every orchestra needs a conductor, right? The one setting the tempo for the whole show is a tiny cluster of cells called the sinoatrial node, or just the SA node for short. When it's in charge, we call that beautiful rhythm a sinus rhythm. That's the gold standard.
What you're looking at here is a map of that perfect journey for a single beat. It all starts when the SA node fires off a signal telling the top chambers, the atria, to contract. Then that signal hits a little gatekeeper called the AV node, which creates a very important pause, letting the lower chambers fill up with blood. And finally, the signal zips down this specialized highway, telling the powerful ventricles to pump that blood out to the rest of your body. It's a flawless sequence every single time.
And when that perfectly timed electrical symphony happens over and over again, you get a steady, predictable pulse. For most resting adults, that's going to be somewhere around 70 beats per minute. It's consistent, it's reliable, and it's what keeps us going.
So, what happens when this perfect journey gets disrupted? What if the conductor loses its place? Or what if some of the musicians just start playing out of turn? Well, that's when the rhythm breaks.
And this is where we get the term arrhythmia. It's a pretty broad term that just means the heart has lost its normal rhythm. The electrical signal has gone off course, and that leads to a heartbeat that's either too fast, too slow, or just plain all over the place.
It really boils down to two fundamental ways this electrical journey can fail. The first is what we call altered impulse generation. You can think of this like a rogue musician in the orchestra, just starting their own tune and trying to override the conductor. The second is altered impulse conduction. That's where the signal starts off just fine, but it gets blocked or rerouted, kind of like a traffic jam on that electrical highway.
So what can cause these disruptions? Well, it's a whole range of things, really. Scar tissue from a past heart attack can physically block the signal's path. Things like stress or even just too much caffeine can make parts of the heart electrically irritable, causing them to fire off these rogue signals. Heck, even an imbalance of simple electrolytes, like potassium, can mess with the electrical stability of your heart cells.
Now, not all arrhythmias are created equal, not by a long shot. To understand and treat them, doctors have to become almost like electrical detectives, mapping out the chaos to figure out exactly what is going on. The very first clue is location. Is the problem starting supraventricular, which just means above the ventricles in those upper chambers, or is it ventricular, starting down in the more powerful lower chambers? This is an absolutely crucial distinction because, as a general rule, arrhythmias in the ventricles are often much more dangerous.
The second clue? It's all about speed. Is the heart beating way too slowly? We call that a bradyarrhythmia. Or is it beating way too fast? That's a tachyarrhythmia. When you combine the location and the speed, doctors get a much, much clearer picture of the specific kind of rhythm problem they're dealing with. Okay, let's look at two examples to see why this matters so much. On the left, you've got atrial fibrillation, or AF. It starts in the upper chambers, the atria, and it causes this chaotic, irregularly irregular rhythm. Now, it's serious because it can lead to fatigue and really increases the risk of stroke, but it's often manageable. But then, on the right, you've got ventricular fibrillation, or VF. This starts in the lower chambers, and it's not just irregular, it's total chaos. And here's the crucial difference. With VF, the ventricles are just quivering uselessly. They are not pumping any blood. That's what's known as no cardiac output, and that is the very definition of a cardiac arrest. So while AF is a serious disruption, VF is, as the quote says, electrical anarchy, a complete system failure that requires immediate emergency intervention. So you're probably thinking, this is an invisible electrical problem happening deep inside my chest. How do doctors actually see what's going on to make a diagnosis? Well, they have a pretty fascinating toolkit. The cornerstone is the electrocardiogram, or ECG, which gives them a snapshot in time of the heart's electrical signals. But what if the arrhythmia just comes and goes? That's where a Holter monitor comes in. It's basically a wearable ECG that records for a day or two, acting like a detective on a stakeout to catch the culprit in the act. And, sometimes the diagnosis can start with something as simple as the doctor listening to the chest and feeling the pulse, detecting that classic irregularly irregular rhythm of AF.
Okay, so once the problem has been mapped out and diagnosed, the next step is treatment. The goal is always to get the heart's orchestra back in sync, playing from the same sheet of music again. If we use atrial fibrillation as our example again, treatment isn't just about one thing. Doctors really have three main goals. First, control the rate, slow the heart down so it's not racing out of control. Second, if possible, restore that normal sinus rhythm. And third, and this is so critical, prevent complications, especially the formation of blood clots that can lead to a stroke. This has actually led to a really smart, holistic approach for managing AFib, known simply as the ABC pathway. A is for anticoagulation to avoid strokes, B is for better symptom management, which means controlling the heart rate and rhythm, and C is for optimizing care for other cardiovascular issues and comorbidities, things like high blood pressure or diabetes, which can make AFib worse.
The treatment toolbox is really diverse. It includes medications like beta blockers to control the rate, procedures like radiofrequency ablation that can sometimes actually cure an arrhythmia by cauterizing the source of the rogue signals, all the way to emergency defibrillation to shock the heart back into rhythm during a crisis like VF. And for long-term management, some people might get implantable devices like pacemakers to speed up a slow heart, or defibrillators to automatically shock a dangerously fast one.
So you see, whether it's just a tiny flutter or a serious condition, it all comes back to that electrical journey. Knowing how this incredible system is supposed to work, that perfect symphony of a sinus rhythm, is honestly the most powerful tool you have. It empowers you to understand what's happening in your own body and have much better conversations with your doctor.
Your heart sends a signal every single second of every single day. After this journey into its electrical world, the only question left is, are you listening?